full committee, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask a question about some of the proposals in Trump's Project 2025. The chapter on the Department of Energy is a Republican wish list of closed offices and shuttered programs, and you really don't see anything that would help reduce energy prices for Americans or combat the climate crisis. So we know that these extreme cuts will drive up costs for Americans, but I want to get into some of the details here. Trump's Project 2025 specifically calls for the elimination of energy efficiency standards for appliances. And as we know, this has been a major priority for Republicans this year, so I'm not surprised to see it spelled out in Project 2025. Let me ask Mr. Higgins, can you please elaborate on how the elimination of efficiency standards for appliances will actually increase energy costs for consumers?
Yes, thank you for the question. The Department of Energy has recently finalized standards for air conditioners, heat pumps, dishwashers, refrigerators. And when you add those together, the cost savings for households and businesses is roughly $1.9 billion per year. If we got rid of the tools that raise the standards on appliance manufacturers, we would wind up with more costly appliances that consumers would be forced to accept.
Well, thank you. I mean, essentially, Republicans claim to care about energy costs, but they're opposed to anything that actually reduces energy bills. So let me go to a second question I alluded to earlier in my opening. I want to talk about the collusion allegations that the FTC has presented against Scott Sheffield, the former CEO of America's largest independent oil producer. So, Mr. Higgins, could you talk about the pocketbook impact to Americans if oil companies were colluding with OPEC to keep crude oil and gasoline prices high?
This is an extraordinary story to learn that there were explicit messages talking about the desire to keep prices high. This was at a time when Russia had just invaded Ukraine. And in just 2 weeks' time, the price of a gallon of gasoline in the United States jumped 50 cents. That was extraordinary. And it's because although the crisis in Europe didn't raise domestic production costs, it did raise global price of oil. And that meant oil companies in the United States could profit off of the difference. And the people who paid the bill were American consumers. So in that time period, that 1 year, the global fossil fuel industry earned record profits of over $400 billion. And here in the United States, oil companies were not using that money to reinvest in production, to boost supplies. In fact, the allegations that the FTC is looking into look at the statements they were making at the time about how they didn't want to be raising production because they were enjoying those prices. And instead, they took those profits and they poured them back into stock buybacks and dividends, more than $46 billion between 2021 and 2022, those 4 quarters. This is just an extraordinary opportunity for the oil and gas industry to profit off of fossil fuel price instability at the expense of the American consumers. And if we can finish the transition to clean energy, we don't have to be susceptible to that price volatility anymore.
Well, thank you. I have one more question, Mr. Higgins. The Biden-Harris administration has taken a number of steps to lower energy costs for American families, including programs created by the Inflation Reduction Act. Can you talk about some of the programs that are now making a difference in reducing energy costs?
Yeah, so the investments in clean electricity, which is the cheapest way to produce electricity, are being built because of these investments. That's driving down the average cost of electricity generation and helping to combat the price increases we would see due to all of the new load that's coming onto the system. At the same time, these programs are making it more affordable for households to be able to make the switch if they choose to. So that includes the new home energy rebates programs, which are just now being rolled out through the states. And they provide up to 100% of the costs for low-income households to switch to heat pumps, which can have a savings of up to $860 per year because it's so much more efficient than old electric resistance heaters or even natural gas furnaces. That's just one of the many programs here that's making it possible for people to participate in the clean energy economy.
Well, I appreciate that. Again, Republicans say they're supporting lowering costs for American families, but they voted more than 50 times to repeal parts of the Inflation Reduction Act that are actually lowering energy costs. So Democrats are going to continue to fight these Republican efforts and will instead look to build upon the action that we took with the Inflation Reduction Act. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The